All right, hello everyone. Let me first of all pull up my slides and then I think we can get started. Welcome to our usual monthly Google Ads API release highlights event. This time for version 24.1 of the Google Ads API. I am Mattia Tomazone. I guess you're familiar with me right now if you've been following our release events, but if you are not, I am part of the Google Ads developer relations team, meaning that I work as a developer relations engineer on the Google Ads API. So as I just said, and as I used to like starting our events, let's talk about the schedule. This event is about version 24.1 of the Google Ads API, which just came out yesterday. And it's a minor release, which means that there are no breaking changes, although there's quite a few interesting new features in it. And if you've been following our events and our latest releases, you would also know that we generally tend to do API releases and live events towards the end of the month, but May is a special month at Google. Because we have a lot of big events. We have I/O coming up, and we also have GML, Google Marketing Live, coming up soon. So this means that we usually have freezes in place where we don't want to be breaking anything during these events. And this meant that we kind of anticipated the API release a bit. So it came out sooner than expected, basically, which is good. It's good to have new features sooner than you were expecting. Also, the next release is going to be V24.2. So it's going to be another minor release. So again, no breaking changes for a while now. The next major release is going to be in July. But speaking of next month and speaking of June, I also have an important reminder, which I know I've been mentioning a few times already in our live events, and that is that V20 of the Google Ads API is going to be sunset soon, actually in June. So if you use our official client libraries and you updated the latest version, you will notice that we already removed V20 from the latest versions of the client libraries because it's due for sunset soon. So I really recommend, if you haven't, to start upgrading to at least V21. But of course, if you want to get all the latest and greatest in the Ads API, then you should upgrade to V24, which will also give you V24.1. So as usual, I'm quite, I have habits that I like to keep on our live events. And as usual, I want to start with some recent updates that are not necessarily related to the Google Ads API itself, but they are related to things happening around the API. So in the whole context of things that you can do with Google Ads and its API. So the first update that I want to share is that my teammate Corey, which I will pull up for the Q&A section later, released a new episode of his brilliant Ads Devcast. And this one, episode 4, is really great. It's about best practices and productionizing and scaling all your Google advertising and measurement APIs related applications. So I really recommend you take a look at it so that it can help you take your applications to the next level and make them more robust and scalable. There are really some interesting topics being discussed in there, and they're relevant for any production level applications. So for instance, you will learn how to handle retries with transient errors, or how to log API metadata correctly. But there's also a lot of tips and tricks that are specific for each one of the ads and measurement APIs that we work with. Also, keep an eye out for episode 5, which will come out soon, because it will be out right after GML, and it will go over some of the bigger announcements that we are going to make. So I recommend you also subscribe to all of our channels so that you'll be notified when it's out. Another update I have is one that I really like to talk about, not just because I'm personally involved with it, but also because I think it's an interesting project. It's interesting because it's one that I really own and I personally care about, but I think it's also interesting from a developer's perspective. It's the Google Ads MCP server. And the latest addition that we made to it is that it now supports being deployed on the Google Cloud Platform. So up until, I think, a couple weeks ago, it only supported local deployments. But now you can deploy the MCP server on the Google Cloud Platform or on any other cloud provider's platform. And then you can access the server with different AI agents. So this, again, is a good step in making your AI integration and your agentic flows more scalable by having the MCP server deployed on the Google Cloud Platform. There's a guide on our dev site about it. I will leave you a link to it in all the relevant chats, so on YouTube, Discord, LinkedIn, and anywhere else. But also keep an eye out because I have a video tutorial about it that is going to be released, I think, well, let's say soon. No promises on this, but it's coming out soon. Then, the next thing that I like to be doing in our live events is to take a quick look back at the features that we released recently in the Google Ads API. So in this case, cool things that came out with V24. A big one, which is very likely going to impact all of our developer community or a significant part of our developer community, is the fact that we now deprecated dynamic search ads. So starting with Starting with V24, dynamic search ads can no longer be created with the API. However, existing dynamic search ads will still be serving at least until September. So we recommend you start migrating your dynamic search ads, your existing ones at least, to AA Max soon, because by September they will be auto-migrated. Again, further details coming soon on this, but I would really recommend starting to think about migrating dynamic search ads to AA Max. Then, another cool thing that came out in V24 is in the video space, which, as you know, is the one I'm most familiar with because it's one of the areas of the API that I personally work on. And this is also a pretty big change because developers have been asking about this for, I guess, forever. And starting with it's always hard. Starting with V24, you are now able to mutate video ads. So this opens up a lot of possibilities, like updating the YouTube video asset used by an ad or modifying its properties, such as the headline, the description, or the call to action. All of these were not possible with the Google Ads API before V24, but now you can do this. Final revisit of a feature that was released in V24 is the ability to enable view-through conversion optimization for demand gen and app campaigns. So view-through conversions are conversions that happens when a customer views an ad but doesn't necessarily interact with it immediately, but later completes a conversion on the advertiser's website. So this is not enabled by default. So if you want to allow turning it on, resource that you can set to true to enable this optimization. But now, without further ado, let's get started with the new features that just came out yesterday. And there's one that is pretty big, not just because it was requested by developers, but it's also because it's literally a big feature. It's actually a lot of changes in a single feature. So we kind of entirely revamped our whole experiments framework. So as you know, experiments in Google Ads let you do basically A/B tests. They let you measure whether some changes would make sense for a business or not. And there's a bunch of new experiment types being released in V24.1. For instance, there's one that it's called Adopt AA Max. That is, you can use to test how AA Max would help engaging more customers by using Google AI optimizations. And you can get like an actual measurement on the impact that adopting AA Max would make. So you can see for yourself without, making the whole change by yourself, but you can just, dip your toes in the water and do an A/B test for a small percentage of your users and see what the real impact is and whether or not it makes sense for you. Similarly, there is a PMax replacement shopping experiment that can test how your regular shopping campaigns would perform compared to Performance Max for retail. And again, experiments are a very powerful feature because they give you a lot of actionable information that you can use to, take decisions on your advertising business. And those decisions can be informed by actual data generated by the experiment. When you run an experiment, though, a significant topic in running experiments is statistical relevance. So, how do you decide whether or not an A/B test has run for enough users that the data it generated are relevant, are valid, are actionable, and they can help you take decisions and actions upon? And the good thing about this is that we added a bunch of new metrics that you can use to measure the statistical relevance for each metric of an experiment. So you basically now can compare clicks, impressions, costs, and all of these metrics between the control arm of an experiment and the treatment arm. And this gives you a clear indication of the results of your experiment. And also, we have statistics for all of these metrics that let you know exactly how an experiment was statistically significant. So you have the point estimates, the margin of errors, and the p-values for each of those metrics that let you know how relevant an experiment is and how good the information it's giving you are. Then, another interesting feature that we just released in V24.1 is for demand gen, which is also a part of the Google Ads API close to my heart because it's one of my areas of interest. It's a new field that we added to the demand gen multi-asset ads object, and it allows you to use image assets that will not be combined with other assets. So as you know, demand gen ads are built by combining assets to make sure that the ads perform as best as they can. But there are cases where you just want, an image to deliver impressions by itself, as if it was a display ad. And you can do this now by using the classic display images field in the demand gen multi-asset ads object. So this gives you even more control and more options on how you want to run your demand gen campaigns. Finally, last feature that I want to highlight in V24.1 is a change we recently announced that we are going to make to our data retention policy. So starting on June 1st, which is in 2 weeks now, granular performance statistics, so basically daily, hourly, and weekly data, will only be available for 37 months. So we just introduced a new error in V24.1, which is called requested date granularity not supported, and it will be returned if you request granular data for a time range that goes back further than 37 months. You can still retrieve, historical data, so backwards more than 37 months, aggregated on a monthly, quarterly, or yearly basis, and you have that data stored, and you can retrieve that going back up to 11 years. But granular data, so hourly, daily, and weekly data, is only going to be retrievable for up to 37 months back. We also recently published a blog post about this, so I'm going to leave you a link, again, in all the relevant chats. This being said, it's time for my cat slide and for me to pull up my teammate Corey that I just mentioned a while ago, and is actually here. Hello, sir.
Good hey, how's everybody doing? Good. So we have two questions here for you so far.
Wow.
And we'll see if we get any more as we go, but we'll just start from that list. So you can hear me all right, right?
Of course.
Okay, perfect. Okay,
it's a new thing because last time I didn't hear you. But we worked on this, and now I can hear you. Technology.
All right, so first question for you. Will existing DSAs keep serving even if new ones can no longer be created?
Yes, they will. So the only change that we introduced in V24 is that you cannot create any new DSAs, but if you have any existing ones, they will keep serving until September. So, I mean, it's not like you really have to migrate them now, But if I were a developer, I would start considering migrating them to AA Max.
Better to start early.
Exactly.
All right, next one for you is a little
Mhm.
bit different. All right, so I'm finally migrating my YouTube Data 3 uploads over to the Google Ads video upload. Am I correct in my understanding that we cannot do direct upload from the browser to Google Ads YouTube? We have to have an interim server.
This is an interesting one. I don't have an immediate answer for. Let me check. I'm actually reading the question on Discord again.
Sure.
Hmm.
And maybe kind of the root of the question here is just how do you use the new features for managing YouTube videos in Google Ads?
Well, I mean, it is technically possible to upload from the browser to YouTube using the Google Ads API because there is REST endpoints for it. So technically, you could have a JavaScript application in the browser that uploads videos to the Google Ads API by using the REST HTTP endpoints. So, I mean, I don't entirely understand the question, but the fact that the YouTube Upload API uses REST makes it so that it's technically available from every platform.
The real crux of that issue is just how do you manage the developer token and your
Yeah,
auth, right?
right.
Okay.
But once you get the auth figured out, which it's really not an easy feat, but can be done, the technical details of doing YouTube uploads with the REST API are, well, easier than auth. Let's put it that way.
Cool. And that looks like that's the last question here in chat.
Okay. Well, should we just leave a minute or so for any last minute questions? I'm actually looking at YouTube and Discord. I have all my screens around me. I have YouTube there, I have Discord here, I have our own chat there. But yeah, I don't see any last minute questions. So I guess this means that we can just thank everyone for watching and, tell everyone we will see them next month, I guess, for our next live event. But I will also want to remind everyone to watch your devcast because it's really great.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, that's a good call out. Folks, GML is coming up. GML is going to be
Yes.
very exciting. We're very much looking forward to that. We're actually going to have a special devcast episode following GML the day afterwards. So definitely
Yay.
listen to that one.
Yay announcements, yay new features, yay devcast. All right. Thanks everyone. Thanks Corey for, being here with me. And I will see you all next time. Bye.